It's March 16th. St. Patrick's Day is tomorrow, is that right? Is it
That's
tomorrow?
the rumor.
Yeah, so my goal is to be in bed before 9. How about yours?
My goal is to sleep. Sometime.
So Gerry had a week, I'm sorry, this is Christan Griego, this is Gerry Pagano, bass trombonist with St. Louis. Is it symphony or orchestra?
Symphony.
St. Louis Symphony, I want to make sure I'm right here. How long have you been doing that?
It's my 23rd year.
Which is funny because I'm 23 years old.
That is not true.
So, so 23 years ago, huh?
Yep, June of 1995.
How old were you when you got your job?
Ooh, 38. Do the math. 61 now. I think that adds up.
38. So can you tell me a little bit about how you
Why
got
it took
into...
me so long to get a job.
I didn't want to say it like that, but yeah.
Well,
yes, can you please?
I was 30 when I got my first job, which was with the San Francisco Ballet Orchestra, and I had just finished my 3 years at Juilliard. I was just a late bloomer, I guess. I was doing other things with trombone. I was playing music that you might call jazz, commercial, pop. I'm not sure what it would be termed, because I would basically take any job I got called for. My day book was open, but I wasn't interested in symphony music until later in life. I've been living in Phoenix for a number of years, and they had a couple of openings while I was there, and when I would take an audition, I wasn't getting anywhere, and I thought, well, if I want a job doing this, I need to go back to school and get the training that it would take. So at age 27, I went to Juilliard and finished up a couple of degrees and got a job a couple months after I finished Juilliard. I got my first job in San Francisco and was there 8 years before I got the job in St. Louis. So, it took me a while to find my path and get to where I am now. But, I got there. That's the main thing. It's, I guess, better to be persistent and keep working than to, give up.
I actually already knew this story, but I think it's a great story because many times people, when they're in their more mature ages, they're told, no, you need to,
It's too late.
It's too late, yeah. If you don't have a job by the time you're 21, 22. Yeah. And I think it's refreshing to hear that, you can be, maybe not know exactly what you want to do when you're 16 or 15, where they're making people choose these paths for their life career already when they're in junior high. I sometimes feel like we're pushing people sometimes a little too soon.
Well, if you do know that, it's a great advantage if you're able to be one of those people that know at an early age and just go straight for it right away. But for a lot of people, that isn't going to be the case, and I don't think you should give up on what you want just because you think you're too old or that chance has passed you by. And it wouldn't be the only, I wouldn't be the only person that persevered and ended up, years later getting to the same goal.
Obviously, we're at Griego Mouthpieces right now, and we make equipment, and we work together with the Edwards project on the 502, the dependent model, 502D, which took us a few years to do. Can you talk to me a little bit about equipment and how your path, how it started and how it's shifted and arrived where you're at today?
Sure. Well, ironically, when I got the job in St. Louis, I was playing on at Edwards, but it was a Thayer valve. Independent Thayer valve Edwards.
Independent?
Excuse me. Yes, you didn't know that. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Independent. And I.
So you can only win jobs on independent bass trombones. That's what he's saying.
Yeah. Right.
Sorry, trombone joke.
But I played a number of different horns throughout the years, and I like after finding your voice after years of trying to define what is it that I want to sound like, I gravitated to this instrument because it is easier for me to sound like I want to sound. I think eventually you'll sound however you want to sound in whatever you're playing, but it could be harder to get it. It's easier if you've got an instrument and equipment that's already geared to kind of sound and play the way you want to play or the way you want to sound. Some equipment is better for a jazz player than a classical player, or better for somebody that has a fast airstream compared to somebody that has a slower airstream, or depending on all kinds of things that have to do with just your physical makeup. Some horns will work for somebody and not for somebody else. And especially with this setup, because not that many people, I know certainly a few people and some pretty big name people that play on Dependence, starting with Doug Yo and Dave Taylor and myself. It was all about the resonance that you're going to get when you have a straight pipe there. And you know, if we could, we'd have a bass trombone that was like the old straight tenor trombones that had no valves. Obviously, you've got to have valves to play in the low register. But the straight pipes are the trombone sound. That's the whole goal, is to have, to me, the resonance of straight pipes, and to try and avoid the bends. And you know, when we started changing to having open wraps, again, it was a resistance factor. So having the second valve over just seems like it, just looking at it, makes more sense. It would be more resonant because you don't have that bump. And how much of the time am I playing on two valves? Not that much. And a lot of the time I'm not even playing on one valve.
Yeah, and we've had this approach, or this discussion many times over the years since you and I have started working together, about how so much of the time a bass trombone is actually being played in the tenor register with the tenors that you're sitting next to, rather than playing in the subterranean. And a lot of people, they gear an instrument maybe towards the subterranean louds, let's just say, but then they can't play soft, and they can't play delicate, and they can't play like a tenor trombone because their sound triangulates in the upper register and gets really woofy.
Well, and actually, you know, I kind of, you know, I would almost rather that people didn't get smart and, you know, quit trying to do that, because whenever I hear someone that's geared everything so they can play the loudest pedal left they can, and then they can't play above the staff with a clear sound, it's like, well, I'm going to have an advantage over them 90% of the time, because at least playing bass trombone in the orchestra, really you could say third trombone, because it's not going to involve that much below the staff. And if you play stuff with tenors and you sound like them, it's better, I think, to have a clear sound that matches with them when you have to play in unisons and octaves. And I think that, you know, there are a lot of people that get crazy about something that they're not going to do that much and choose a horn based on that. And you know, that's not my life. Oh, hello.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, my wife's texting.
Oh, nice. So,
I'll turn that off.
oh, okay. Along the same lines with equipment, your mouthpieces that we've worked on, I don't know how long now.
Oh gosh, yeah, years.
A few
I'm not
years,
sure,
yeah. But we started off with the GP, which I actually started with Mark Holscher, working with as well. He'd come into the shop because you're in St. Louis.
Right.
And a lot of times if I'm doing work on a tenor project, I'll bring in a bass player. But if I'm doing, like when I'm working on bass, I just stick with that. I try and just stick with one thing at a time with development. But Mark Holscher was a big help beta testing some of the stuff before I would send it to you. Can you talk about what your likes and dislikes in mouthpieces are, and how you came about with where we're at?
Well, and I would have, I don't know how many dozens of mouthpieces on a shelf at home, and others that over the years I've discarded, gave away, sold. So, you know, it would probably fill this table if you'd seen all the different things I've tried to play over the years. And there is no magic mouthpiece that's going to be perfect for everyone. Well, yes.
It's right here.
There wasn't until you developed this.
You can buy it online.
Now that this exists.
Sorry,
well,
go ahead.
And a lot of this is like the horn you play. It's like, this suits me, but I also think one of the things I like about it is in the past, you had bass trombone mouthpieces who were so big that all they really did was play low well. And this mouthpiece, I think, is really well balanced. The first GP mouthpiece that you ever had me try, that was at that point, it wasn't a GP mouthpiece, it was just a prototype. It plays well in all registers, and it doesn't, you know, become a problem if you have to play Beethoven 9 or play whatever above the staff. It's not debilitating and only geared towards playing the low register. It's clear and can get a sound that works down low as well. And I think that's one of the things I like. It's a balanced mouthpiece, but it's not solely geared to what for years, you know, a lot of the mouthpieces I had were so big. And I remember a time when you would get a mouthpiece and take out the lead pipe and have it built up so it goes straight into the slide. Lots of detours.
Did you ever do that?
Oh yeah, I had a couple of those, and I, you know, tried it because it was in vogue for a while, and I certainly don't believe in it now. Lead pipes are there for a reason, but I think, you know, the thing about it is this, and you know, this is a lighter blank. I like that too. Some people do not like a lighter blank, but I want resonance, and the less weight on my mouthpiece, I feel like I'm resonating easier and quicker all the time. And when you start putting things on the horn, even the pillars, I feel like that takes away some of the resonance. So I want a horn that's going to resonate, and I'll have to work maybe to control certain things. But this mouthpiece, I feel like it's got a lot of clarity, a lot of balance and resonance. And you know, it's kind of my concept over the years is steering more and more that direction.
Now, within this design, when we worked on this, little of the background machining side of it, I think bass trombone mouthpiece design was held back a lot by our manufacturing techniques. And what I mean by this is we would always start with one blank, just one outer shape, and we'd have one backbore in it. And then from that, we'd always chuck on it, and then we'd put whatever cup and throat into that blank. So we would have one standard blank, we'd make 500 of them, or whatever, and then we would put whatever rim and cup and throat into that blank.
Right.
For me, the true breakthrough was when I got my newer machine, and I could have a sub-program for the backbore, or a sub-program for the different rim, cup, and throat. And then my overall links I could vary, because they're coming off the machine complete without having to make a blank per se. And that allowed us to find the best backbore to match that cup, throat, rim, overall length. All those in conjunction, and we could call up the sub-programs to be able to do these things on a mass production scale and not just be limited by, honestly, by having a tenor. A lot of times the tenors would be developed and the blank would be developed with the backbore, and then guess what the bass trombones got? They got that.
Yeah.
Well, was it the best? Yeah, I guess, because
No.
well, no, and that's where we've made leaps and bounds in the manufacturing techniques behind the scene to be able to produce these mouthpieces. And that's been the fun part for me. When we started, we actually started just like I told you, one blank, one backbore, and it was our backbore for basses and everything. And we still use those on our standard classic Griego lines. But I think moving forward, we've been able to with your line, with the other things. It's my eyes have been opened quite a bit into what is possible if you're not held constrained or in handcuffs from these traditional designs or manufacturing techniques.
A great analogy for me is trying to use my trombone mouthpiece in euphonium. It's not designed for euphonium. The resistance, the way euphonium works is totally different. Of course, being a trombone player, that's what you do, is you just take your mouthpiece out of your trombone and put it in the euphonium and try and use it. Well, you know, if you go get one that's designed to work on euphonium, the taper and the backbore, all that's going to be different because the instrument you're playing it on. And it makes sense if you're going to make the same blank for a bass as a tenor, something about that isn't going to work. And I imagine if you had started, you know, naturally tenors were kind of more focused on than the basses for a long time. But if you'd taken a bass design and tried to make it work for a tenor, it probably wouldn't have worked because, again, everything would have been geared for a different thing. And it only makes sense, but, you know, again, if you think about it, it makes sense why it would have been done that way. It was easy to run off 500 and then make a little change, and here's your bass trombone mouthpiece.
Yeah, and they would, yeah, absolutely. So you're involved a lot in teaching, performing, of course, and solos, master classes. I mean, the works. Can you talk a little bit about the St. Louis Low Brass Collective, which I've been down to visit whenever you've had events, which in St. Louis, I mean, it's pretty phenomenal to see what you're doing for the community on a local level and on a regional and national level, getting out and doing the master classes and clinics. Can you talk a little bit about why you do these things?
Well, I guess when we started out, we really didn't know what we were creating. There's not anything like it anywhere else.
So
we would be, well, it started out with Tim Myers and myself, and some of the other trombone players in the St. Louis community, and it's enlarged over time. We've got more and more educators involved because we didn't want it to just be people that played professionally or people that played classical. So now the people involved with the Low Brass Collective in St. Louis include professionals, part-timers, jazzers, classical teachers. You know, it's
euphoniums, low brass.
Yeah, tuba, euphonium. The whole idea is to not be just trombone collective. We could do that, but this is supposed to be. And I think part of it stemmed from the St. Louis community not having a big music program at a big music school. Maybe the fact that the symphony, our schedule allowed for us to have time to do some of these outside things and be engaged. But when it started to become popular and go well, the more we did it, the more we enjoyed it. We would get music written for that instrumentation because there was a lot of trombone choir music and there was tuba ensemble music, but nobody had written much for the combination. And they're not the same. If you take a 8-part trombone choir piece and just give the bottom part to a tuba or give a part to the different instruments. And if you capitalize on the benefits of using the conical valve instruments with the trombone, you can get a unique sound. But there isn't a lot of that, so we've had to get a lot of that music either arranged for us, and we've gotten a lot of fun tunes arranged, like Inagata Davida, or there's some Stevie Wonder tunes we've done, like Superstition, and even Beethoven Ode to Joy, you know, get it written out so that it works for those instruments. And then we've also had new music written for us. But for me, between playing in the orchestra, the low brass collective, even, and you haven't mentioned our quartet, the trombone quartet from the symphony, all these different things give me different musical outlet and different creativity. And so it's fun to do. If you sit in back of the orchestra and that's all you ever do, after a period of time, you're going to become pretty, I think you could get pretty stale pretty quickly. I don't get a lot of melody sitting in the back, and I do have a lot of rehearsals. I end up leaving and I've never really warmed up because I've had 5 tacit movements or whatever. So being able to do the other things that are involved in my career and my life keeps me playing in different venues. If I play in a brass quintet and I play the tuba part, that's a different kind of playing than playing the bottom voice in a trombone quartet. Playing in an orchestra, playing a solo. It's not the same to play with a piano as it is to play with a percussionist or a string quartet or whatever. And the more you get to do different things, I think the better it is for you as a musician. And
I think it opens you up to different colors and overtone structures that are within music and in, sorry for the CNC noises in the background, I can hear them making parts, sorry about that. But it opens up your...
I thought that sound was in my head.
I'm
glad to hear it, yeah.
Anyway, it opens up your eyes. Like a friend of mine playing bass trombone, flute, and piano on a gig. Actually got somebody to hire him to play with bass trombone, flute, and piano. I mean, but it opens up your eyes to different sounds and sound structures, not just getting locked into one sound, one color. And I think that, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but whenever I heard the trombone quartet, y'all did some commissions and you did some arrangements. I think of Radiohead. And it was great to be in the audience, honestly, and not hear standard rep. No offense to standard rep, but I'll be honest. I think we got to have a. Well, I'm not going to say that. I'll be nice.
I'll say it. We need a wider palette. I think if we didn't do that, and there's certainly a lot of people out there that are doing different things and have been doing different things for trombone for a while. But you know, I think the more we can branch out and incorporate other things, the better it is. Not just as a musician, but you won't get bored as quickly. I think if I came to a concert and all I heard was 4 trombones for an hour, you know, they'd have to be pretty good to keep my interest.
Well, and that's, you know, doing the commissions and the new pieces, I think is important as musicians to progress forward. And it's great to hear standard rep and learn and grow from that as a young musician. But there's a point where I respect that you're doing the new works and new commissions with the quartet, individually with low brass collective, and trying to push things forward, so that in 20 years we have new rep. And we have.
Well, and with solos too. You know, one of the pieces I'm very proud of having a piece written for me by Jim Stevenson called The Arch. Ironically, right? When I had him write it, I didn't tell him, well, this is what kind of piece I want, and I just left him creatively to do whatever. And then you get the music, and you're like, okay, no, he's never played it, so I got to figure out how does this go. Well, it goes however I think it goes, combined with the information obviously the composer's already given you. But I think that also comes with, if you've been playing for 20, 30 years, at a certain point, if you're not doing something new and different, you're going to get bored. And I think the last thing I want to do is be bored. I love playing, and I think I enjoy playing more than ever because I'm not just doing the same old thing for 30 years and trying to find new territory, and you know, it's engaging.